Okay, so I've been thinking a lot about gnomes lately. Yeah, you heard me right. Gnomes. Gnomes, gosh. It sounds stupid saying it. Okay, at first it was really surface level. And about, like, I guess a week in of them popping into my head, honestly, without ceasing, I had to ask, bro, what is going on? Why am I literally thinking about gnomes? Bro, these kitschy boomer style lawn ornaments, the C tier mythical creature that is the butt of endless jokes and mockery. Why is this popping into my head? But I got to thinking though, like, okay, they're in my head and I'm judging them, but why? I don't even know anything about them. To be honest, who am I to judge? Literally, if all I know of them is their distinct look and that they've been mass produced into oblivion, I don't think I've given them a fair shake. So I decided to do some research, and with this deeper inspection, I think I finally have cracked the mystery of my seemingly inexplicable fascination. Gnomes are far more poignant and powerful symbols than I think we ever give them credit for, and if you let me tell the story of the gnome and our current relationship to them, I think you'll find them to be far more interesting than you previously thought as well. And if you just so happen to end up enjoying this video, please give it a like and consider subscribing for more videos just like this one. It would mean a lot. So without further ado, let's get into it. When I was a kid, the world around me was so immensely mesmerizing. I'm imagining it was the same for you as well. Don't lie to me. You love butterflies. You love grasshoppers, little flowers. Everything was so interesting, and it was because you've never seen it before. For me, the thing that took most hold of me was small animals, and I especially loved the kind that you'd find around water. If you took me to a playground, yeah, I'd play on the jungle gym, throw myself down the slide. I'd be an unhinged maniac like any other kid out there. When I was particularly young, 5 to 10, if there happened to be a puddle, stream, or pond nearby, oh my word, you could guarantee I'd be there looking for tadpoles, fish, crawdads, frogs, literally anything alive. I mean, I was hoping, of course, to find something new, something shocking, and as a kid, that wasn't hard. Really, I was looking for a microcosmic world to blow my mind, one of miniature movement. One of my favorite shows was The Enchanted World of Brambley Hedge. It had top-tier cozy vibes. I mean, come on. I loved the aesthetic of the small borrower-like world inhabited by sweet, curious, innocent mice. This show, to me, felt just as magical, just as intimate as the ponds and puddles at the playground did. Gosh, man, the world as a child was just so enchanting, and it felt back then that if you just looked hard enough, listen to me, you would find a secret world or some new creature yet to be added to your Pokedex. Yet for some reason, I don't feel this way anymore, as if I've mapped everything. Yeah, right. There's so much more, yet the older I've gotten, the less magical the world seems. Almost as if something came along and drove the wonder from the land, but not gnomes. Yeah, not gnomes. I still see them fairly often across the street, a block over. Look, when I do see gnomes, for however odd, kitschy, and kind of outdated they feel, they make me feel something. And I think it's because I'm starting to see them, if I had to put a finger on it, as maybe some kind of souvenir from a more imaginative time and land. I think for my boomer neighbor across the street, her collection of little cheeky pissing dwarves propped up against her oak tree, they're not just lawn ornaments. They are markers of a world she lost. If you haven't watched any of Netflix's Love, Death, and Robots, I highly recommend it if you love animation. I have two standout favorite episodes from the first season, Zima Blue and Good Hunting. For the purpose of this video, though, I'm going to bring up Good Hunting, and don't worry, I won't spoil anything if you're actually interested. I mentioned literally just a second ago the idea of magic leaving the world as we grow up, and for the two main characters of this episode, that is actually what is happening to them. A British-like industrial revolution sweeps the land as colonizers show up and introduce the lush countryside to a world of steam and steel. Train tracks unfurl across the undulating emerald horizon like scars and stitches, maiming the face of Mother Nature. The two wrestle with this new world and their rage for what it has become and what it has done to them. Again, I urge you to watch this truly gorgeous story. I imagine this experience they both share must be very familiar to not just people who have experienced colonization or rapid industrialization for that matter, but For those who have felt forced away from something they love, sadly losing themselves in the process. From 1760 to 1840, the Industrial Revolution reshaped Great Britain, much like it did in Good Hunting. Smoke and smog began to belch out from chimney tops. City streets were caked with horse dung and soot. It was a grotesque transformation that caused many to miss the English countryside, the English garden, the English cottage. It was where the air was crisp, the flowers beautiful and bright, where garden mice and toads may be living idyllic little lives right under your own nose. Immediately following was the Victorian era. An interesting little fact, dollhouses exploded in popularity at this time, thanks to mass production. They weren't children's toys, though. No, they were a status symbol instead, used to show off the owner's affluence and taste. Britain and their little worlds, huh? I can't help but feel that the chaos of rapid change this culture was plunged into made them crave some sort of control. Little houses, little rooms, little dolls, they're all neat. Every room clean and segmented, allowing for an infusion of order in a newly unrecognizable country. And you know this British cozy aesthetic that I'm starting to bring up here. Peter Rabbit, The Secret Garden, The Cuckoo Clock, Alice in Wonderland, The Borrowers, even The Shire from The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, and of course, my early favorite, Bramley Hedge. These incredible works of literature could have only come from a nostalgic culture yearning for a taste of what was. And within this interesting cultural moment, a man named Sir Charles Isham returns from Germany with the first gnomes to ever have entered Great Britain. Yeah, you heard me right. Garden gnomes, if you weren't aware, originated in Germany, specifically a portion of Germany called the Black Forest region. It's a region famous for many of its fairy tales and its incredibly imaginative mythology. You know Hansel and Gretel, Little Red Riding Hood, Rapunzel, Snow White. Some of the most foundational and memorable tales come from this pocket of earth. You may have never physically visited, but if you grew up with your parents reading you these fairy tales, you have spent many nights imagining and wandering this region. The birthplace of garden gnomes is that region. Skilled German craftsmen made the first ever garden gnome sometime in the 19th century. Germany had an extensive literary and historical tradition of depicting dwarves as mountain men, protectors of something important within the earth. A famous alchemist named Paracelsus derived his very unique concept of gnomes from these German miners and their legends of something called the Bergman line, basically translating to something like a metallurgical demon. These mining stories came from a Germany in the mid-1800s, a Germany that needed ore. It needed coal and minerals to undergo the rapid industrialization its leaders were aiming for, the exact same kind that Britain experienced just decades before. And as a result, the men who were kids when their parents shared with them tales of the Brothers Grimm went into the mines with minds of wonder and worry. It only made sense that they would come out with myths and magic of their own. The mines of Thuringia and Saxony became littered with wooden and terracotta gnomes. Sir Charles Isham, when visiting, found them so intriguing he couldn't help but bring back a massive collection to his estate, where he populated his rock garden with them. Now we jump ahead a bit. We're taking our journey to the United States, where in the 1930s, Disney's Snow White entered the American zeitgeist with a boom. But gnomes didn't really pick up steam here. No, not until after a rough and tumultuous time had passed. Civil rights, the Vietnam War, Watergate, I could go on. The 1960s and 1970s, can you believe it? That's when gnomes exploded in popularity. Much like how the Victorian-era dollhouses allowed for a semblance of control in a world of rapid change, I think the garden gnomes implanted a sense of youthful ignorance and bliss to the homes of many stressed and uncertain Americans. Americans longed for peace in a time of deeply romantic simplicity, but in many ways they were denied this particular luxury. Instead, middle-class America had a different luxury, the freedom to imagine and daydream just a little. And so they did. The gnome, it has a spirit of good luck, a spirit of order. You know how they work behind the scenes to keep nature operating. It just makes sense when I see gnomes wearing hippie garb, or even as the mascot of a local head shop. For an American backyard in the 1970s, and obviously after, these gnomes acted as small sentinels, watching over a little pocket of sanity, attempting to purge it of the toxins of a crazy outside world. I think these gnomes genuinely provided a bit of whimsy and infused some sense of peace into the minds of their owners. It provided escapism. And these little gnomes, they were too cute to just have alone. No, you needed to build a community of these peaceful watchers and guardians. It was comforting clutter. I think that's how we know it best today, is that it must be comforting clutter. It's just so tacky. It seems, honestly, now, a collection of gnomes is so soulless. It's not very creative to just scatter them around your yard, but I like them a lot, actually. Maybe someone just needs to come along and give them a second wind. Reimagine them in some new way. That seems a little too daunting for me, though, so instead, I made this little sticker, and this little guy, he's for me. I loved mice, and I loved frogs, but when I was young, nothing beat tadpoles. There wasn't anything that seemed nearly as magical as metamorphosis did, so it's an adult tadpole. Okay, a frog. But a frog, so that it reminds me that even though I have metamorphosed into an adult myself, I can still remember the magic the world had when I was a kid. And who knows, maybe the next time I see a puddle, I'll stop, not because I expect to see something I haven't yet, but so that I remember the way it used to feel to look at everything with fresh eyes. Our backyards used to feel so magical, and the sad thing is, even though those yards for many are likely still there, we can't go back to what it was. But maybe, and hear me out here, we can scatter a few gnomes. Yeah, around the yard to keep watch over whatever magic might still be there in the hopes of preserving it for others. Or if we get really lucky, to keep it, just in case we somehow find our way back again. As for me, I think I'm going to be sticking this little guy wherever I can. Hey, if you've made it this far, I have to stop and say thank you. Thank you for wanting to listen and hear me out to the very end. It truly means a lot. I hope you're well, and honestly, that you have a wonderful week ahead, and until next time. Peace.